Hello, my name is Darren Mylotte and I'm an Interventional Cardiologist at Galway University Hospital in Ireland. I'm also a member of the WeCare team. I've been asked to discuss with you one of the methods through which we continue to care for patients during the COVID-19 pandemic. The issue that I'm going to discuss is that of pivoting from in-person clinics towards virtual clinics. When the pandemic hit, we clearly understood that patients needed ongoing follow-up, and rather than simply cancelling all of those appointments, we managed to pivot them towards telemedicine consultations. This, of course, is a little bit different both for patients and for clinicians, but it can be a very effective way of continuing to manage and check in with our patients. The first thing we needed to do was to get lists of all of the patients who were due for in-person follow-up and make sure that we had telephone numbers for those patients. We then needed to send those patients and their families letters detailing that their outpatient appointment in the hospital was cancelled, but that it would be replaced by a telephonic follow-up. We asked the patients to be at their phone at a particular time, checked that their telephone number was valid, and asked them to have either a list of their medications or a family member nearby in case they were elderly. I run a valve clinic, and so many of those patients were elderly, and the presence of a family member on the phone really helped at the performance of these clinics. Of course, physical examination is impossible remotely, but we were able to evaluate patients in terms of their symptoms. If patients, for example, were stable with no new symptoms, we were able to arrange for those patients to have either a further telephonic follow-up or indeed come in for a further evaluation in due course when the pandemic was finished. On the other hand, if patients were symptomatic, we were then able to pivot them towards an in-person visit or directly admit them for the particular tests that they needed, be that an echocardiogram or a coronary angiogram and so forth. Some of those tests occurred in a COVID hospital, and if patients had difficulty with that, we were also able to use private institutions and arrange those tests for those patients in COVID negative centres. What's interesting is that despite the pandemic coming towards its conclusion, we certainly have continued to use this method in our day-to-day practice. What we now do is that all new patients who are referred to the structural heart valve clinic come in person. On the other hand, patients who have been asymptomatic, who are undergoing scheduled follow-up, or patients who are traveling for long distances, or patients who just require valvular surveillance after a procedure, all of those patients now are looked after with a telephonic follow-up. Patients seem to enjoy not having to come to the hospital, not having to wait for the in-person appointment, and the availability of family members again really helps the clinic flow smoothly. This is particularly relevant in patients where they're coming from long distances. And in those situations, we've managed to arrange for those patients to have their surveillance or their follow-up echocardiograms at local centres, and then have a telephonic visit with the heart team here at Galway University Hospital with the results of that echocardiogram to hand. That does take involvement of and engagement with the local hospitals. You do have to use some IT resources to ensure that either the images from that echocardiogram or the report of the echocardiogram are available. But by and large, this has worked very well for us and has certainly reduced the number of visits that patients and their families have to make to the hospital. So telephonic clinics were developed during COVID, but have continued post-COVID, and we now manage about 50 to 60% of our patients in this manner. I hope this has been some help for you as we continue to care for our patients. Thank you.